So there's this discourse going around on Twitter about the alt-right pipeline again. And even though I know the best way to deal with Twitter discourses is to ignore them, I kind of want to talk about this one. So this conversation started when a Twitter user made a thread saying this: men don't fall down the alt-right/MRA pipeline because the left isn't doing enough outreach. They choose to subscribe to a fascist ideology because they have an investment in maintaining their position in the social hierarchy, and the liberation of other groups threatens that. Men don't want to lose the power they gain, real or imagined, from patriarchal structures. As socialists, we know men will benefit in other ways from liberation movements, but many simply don't want to give up the power they have, or believe they have, under patriarchy. This tweet exploded when popular YouTuber Vosh replied with this: I cannot stress enough how important it is to understand that 12-year-old white boys on Twitch are not being pulled into fascism because of some Machiavellian desire to preserve and expand their privileges. It's because the right talks to them and the left doesn't. Leftists and progressives have absolutely no idea how unnecessarily repellent they come off to so many people, and they get angry at the idea of being a more effective social movement because they don't want to share their social spaces with people who might have gone another way. This has drawn a definitive line between leftists all across Twitter, and both tweets are definitely saying things, words, ideas. But now that we have some idea of the two sides of this discourse, we can dive into the two main topics of discussion and evaluate what is the best way to deal with alt-right radicalization. For my first point, I want to focus a bit on Vosh's response tweet. Now, this response did something that I haven't really seen addressed much. It shifts the subject from men in general making the choice to subscribe to a right-wing ideology to that of 12-year-old boys. This seemingly subtle change fundamentally shifts the entire conversation. Now, instead of talking about the actual substance of the first tweet, we're talking about how much responsibility children or preteens have in the ideological framework they subscribe to. That, to me, is a fundamentally different conversation. The original poster actually states this as well. Their original post was specifically targeting, or specifically referencing adult men. A lot of the replies and quote tweets focus on content children have access to and the hand that YouTube and other platforms play in delivering that content to young people with malleable brains. However, again, that's not the same conversation. When we talk about the people that watch Andrew Tate and Fresh and Fit, there are a sizable number of young adults and grown men who consume their content as well. And those people, whom the original tweet was referencing, mind you, do hold a higher share of responsibility in the ideology that they hold. However, since the alt-right pipeline is typically associated with young people, I'll move past this point. Now, I want to focus on the actual meat of the argument. For the first point, men don't fall down the alt-right/MRA pipeline because the left isn't doing good enough outreach. I believe this take is fundamentally correct. The rise of right-wing radicalization is not because or due to the left's lack of outreach. We live in a white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist society. These are normative positions, and most Americans hold beliefs in line with these systems. Leftism, by its very nature, is unpopular because it combats the status quo. And they go on to say they choose to subscribe to a fascist ideology because they have an investment in maintaining their position in the social hierarchy, and the liberation of other groups threatens that. I think a lot of people get hung up on the choose, probably by consequence of her capitalizing it, but I think that this is a true statement as well. In the same way that a middle-class person working two jobs and experiencing economic hardship will turn around and advocate for capitalism. It might not be beneficial for them to do so. They would probably be better off if they didn't and the system changed so that they didn't have to experience those hardships. But due to the system that we live under, and due to the propaganda that they are subjected to, they subscribe to the capitalist mindset. They will tell everybody that they know that they need to hustle, they need to grind, they need to work hard in order to become rich, even though it doesn't benefit them to do so. Because at the end of the day, they are better off than the people who are under them. They're under the boot of capitalism, same as everybody else, but they aren't being pushed down as much as their peers. So they believe as long as I'm not them, the system is working for me. But fundamentally, at the core, it's still a choice. And in my analogy, That middle-class person chooses to subscribe to the capitalist ideology because they have an investment in maintaining their position in the social hierarchy, and the liberation of other groups threatens that. So when that person looks up fondly at the top of the socioeconomic class ladder and spits on everybody below them, calling them lazy, that's a choice that they've made. Propaganda from capitalists to invoke those feelings are instrumental in stroking that hatred, yes. And the root cause of it is the capitalist system, yes. But that does not exonerate the person from the hatred that they hold. And that's how I feel about the alt-right pipeline. Now I want to step away from the choice aspect and narrow down on this point. It's because the right talks to them and the left doesn't. The right doesn't just talk to these people. They feed on already existing biases that these people hold while caping to their insecurities. The right lies to them, the same way that capitalists lie to middle-class Americans. I mean, we see it on Tucker Carlson's broadcast all the time.
I'm laughing because this is one of about 10 stories that I know you've covered where the government shows preference to people who have shown absolute contempt for our customs, our laws, our system itself, and they're being treated better than American citizens. Now, I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest that the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it, that's true. Well, strikingly few news outlets in this country have covered it, but the invasion of Europe intensified this weekend. In a record-setting couple of days, more than 7,000 African migrants arrived in Italy. They came by boat, rescued from stormy Mediterranean seas by the Italian Coast Guard and also various international aid organizations. They were not returned to Libya, where they departed from, but dropped instead on Italian soil, where many of them will remain, some for generations, as beneficiaries of European welfare states. So illegal immigration divides the country, it lowers wages for those who can least afford it, and in some cases, it literally costs Americans their lives.
You're being replaced. They want you eradicated. They're taking your jobs. None of this is true, but Tucker is working at the behest of CEOs and right-wing billionaires to perpetuate that notion. Innuendo Studios has a great video series on the alt-right playbook, but there's a specific moment that I want to highlight in this video titled How to Radicalize a Normie.
But there may be a higher than average chance Gabe has a history of being abused or comes from a broken home. You don't know if that's true of Gabe, he's never said. But most abuse survivors don't become Nazis. The things that make people like Gabe recruitable tend to be situational. It happens often during periods of transition, as dramatic as the death of a loved one, or as benign as moving to a new city. Things that make people ask big life questions. Gabe has concerns like economic precarity, not knowing his place in a changing world, stressful working conditions. In other words, Gabe is suffering under late capitalism, same as everyone, and it's entirely plausible he could have gone down the path to becoming a leftist. Now, this is not to make an economic anxiety argument. The animating force of the far right is and always has been bigotry. But the alt-right targets Gabe by treating his economic anxiety as one of many things bigotry can be sold as a solution to. It is their aim that when dissatisfied white men go looking for answers, they find the alt-right before they find us.
They find them before they find us. Why is that the case? In a follow-up tweet, Vosh has this to say: leftists and progressives have absolutely no idea how unnecessarily repellent they come off to so many people, and get angry at the idea of being a more effective social movement because they don't want to share their spaces with people who might have gone another way. Now, while I agree that the left is less approachable than the right, I disagree with Vosh's characterization. The right is more approachable because they hold the normative position. The left, by the nature of our existence, is going to be less popular. People don't like change and we seek to upend the status quo. Well, how do we attract them? You may be asking. Well, firstly, we will never attract support as easily as the right by doing what the right does. See above paragraph. And in an attempt to do so, many leftists will antagonize the marginalized communities that they claim to care about to attract the 12-year-old white edgy demographic. You will weaponize misogyny, weaponize transphobia, weaponize racism to get whatever dunk or ohm you wanted at the time to appeal to that demographic. all while alienating the communities that you claim to care about. So great. Now you have an entire community around you that claims to be leftist, but let a trans person speak to you the wrong way. Let a black woman cross you and we see the truth. We see what happens when you grow a following of former alt-right teams who have failed to reflect and properly address their bigotry. And I personally don't like it. There's a reason why a lot of leftists got so defensive at this tweet. I don't know, something about shoe sizes or something like that. But to answer the question, the best way to reach these men is to meet them at the points of marginalization that they do face, their class position. Even white men have their labor exploited under this mode of production. They hate their bosses too. They are faced with poverty and they're straddled with debt just like the rest of us, and we provide a solution to that. The right gives them solutions that are shrouded in bigotry. You were fired unjustly from your job? The right will tell you that an immigrant took it instead of your boss deciding that your livelihood was overhead that they were willing to cut. The right will tell them that they need to be mad at trans kids, that women are out to destroy their careers with false accusations, and that black people are inherently violent and the driver behind crime. They thrive off of the culture war because they don't actually have the best interests of anybody except for the ruling class at heart. So don't engage with the culture war because you will lose that fight. The best way to reach these men is to show them that we, as the left, truly have their best interests at heart. The right gives them lies. We give them the truth. In conclusion, Twitter is dumb, this discourse is dumb, but also important, especially when these people will coddle these young men instead of educate them at the expense of marginalized communities. I mean, just this sentence right here just gives off white leftist vibes. You want to be safe, you want to have a space away from bigotry? Not in my community, you know? It truly shows that you don't have the best interest of the people that you claim to protect at heart. Some white leftists are way more charitable to people who still hold bigoted ideology fresh out the alt-right pipeline than a black person, a trans person. And to those young men who feel alienated by society, like your cattle being prodded through life, told that you aren't a real man if you aren't wealthy, if you lack the power or the status, that's by design. The more you feed into this system expecting to come out on top, the more you will end up losing. This system is designed for you to lose, just to lose a little bit less than the rest of us. These people, these manosphere guys, are using you by preying off your insecurities. They win when you lose because you keep going back to them for more advice. So stop playing into their games. Thank you all for watching. If you have any thoughts or anything to add, be sure to let me know in the comments below. I guarantee I'm going to read your comments. Also, shout out to my patrons, Mango Breezy, Gut, Tiffany Wright, Alice, Gorvia 2000, and my new patron, Kelladry Jane. Thank you. Cause YouTube not paying me. My last two videos, my longest, most well-researched videos, they hit me with that yellow $sign. Limited monetization because it's not suitable for all advertisers. I don't know what they mean. It's just educational videos, but whatever. So we're gonna have to pull back on the hour-long videos that take months of research, especially if it's not gonna be worth it for my channel. You feel me? So yeah, goodbye. Bye. Bye. Why are you still here? Please leave. I can't leave until you leave. This is like my classroom. Yeah, I supposed to crack it all. Yeah, the bump is on top. Yeah, hey, my mom too clock. Yeah. Everybody do want to be me.